Welcome back into Buccaneers Total Access, brought to you by Advent Health. First half of the show, we had head coach Todd Bowles. Now I am so excited to be joined by offensive line coach Brian Picucci. Coach, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Casey.
Your group has been an interesting one this year.
Absolutely.
I've been very excited to talk to you. I wish it was after a win, but I know you guys were still able to definitely run the ball better against the Patriots than a lot of people had been able to. So what do you feel like worked well in that area?
Well, I think, we started off, we wanted to be balanced with our zone run, our gap run schemes. We wanted to make sure we get the ball on the perimeter and be as diverse as we can and show them a lot of different looks yesterday. So I thought we did a good job early in the game. Obviously, we wanted to play fast. I thought we ran the ball. Our play action pass, is connected to the run game, and that was really good early. And then great play design at the end for that first touchdown. So running the ball, being balanced, showing them different schemes with zone and gap was really what we wanted to do, and get the ball on the perimeter too.
I imagine getting Luke back was really nice for you guys, and he brings such a unique role to the offensive line. So how nice was that, and just the impact it had on the whole group?
Well, it was great. Went right into the game like we didn't miss a beat. We got to do some things on the right side, a little different than we did prior to Luke being out. But really did a great job in drop back pass, especially some of our dishes and drop back pass were really good, and because of Luke and what he can offer. Yeah,
and how much of Luke's true self is he? I know sometimes guys have been out for a while. It takes a bit to maybe knock some rust off or get the stamina back. Does he feel like he's how much of 100% Luke at this point?
Well, I think you could see that confidence last week grow as the practice went on, and then during the game I thought, the big thing I think he wanted to test himself on whether he can anchor against someone with a bull rush, which he did really early in the game. Luke is a detailed-oriented guy as far as technique and fundamentals, always wants to be right, and wants another rep during practice to make sure he fine-tunes it. And I think they tested him early. He knew they were going to test him early. Thought he did a great job, but like Luke has done in the past, wants to be better and perfect at every rep. And I thought, especially coming from the meeting earlier, he wanted to throw his hands a little bit more later in the game, but did a great job on the right side.
I'm sure you love having a player like that that's always seeking to get better and be perfect in
Absolutely.
All the ways. Well,
Absolutely.
As much as it was amazing to have him back, I just feel like we just aren't allowed to have nice things. So then we lose Ben.
During the game.
I just feel, at least we'll have 4. I mean, we knew we weren't going to have Cody the whole rest of the season, but at least we'd have the other 4 original plan. And
which Ben's been the most reliable guy. He's a tough guy. He's a blue-collar guy. He's a very smart guy, a guy who can play multiple positions, and that was the position I least expected to go down yesterday. And then obviously we had to transition with that with Mike. Mike had some play time this year. He's had some play time in the past, but Mike was ready to roll and step right into that role yesterday.
Yeah, and then how have both Michael Jordan and Dan Feeney now looked stepping in at those couple different guard positions, and like you said, Mike Jordan at both guard positions at different points?
It's been great. Those 2 guys have experience. Both of them have been on multiple teams, and Dan likes to tell me he has a lot of skins in the game, which means he's had a lot of play time in the NFL, and being 31 years old really does a great job of not only can step into that role and be a lead in that role at right guard, but he's a sounding piece like Hainsey was last year for Graham, where he can anticipate a lot of things and let Graham know. So Graham trusts Dan. Dan was a great addition by Jason and his staff, and then Mike obviously transitioned in last year from his most recent place, which was the Patriots. And Mike's got a lot of traits that can be very, very elite at guard.
I know the bye week is always welcome when it comes, that no matter when it is, early or late, it always feels like perfect timing in a lot of ways. Yeah. How do you feel like it helped your group and the way that they were able to get a little rested up before it?
Well, just health in general, and then getting some other younger guys, up to speed, where we, worked some younger guys out prior to the break and getting those guys up to speed after practice. But really health, every position, not just offensive line, but every position, because there's injuries at other position on a team, but really next man up mentality, and no one's going to wait for you in the NFL. So
yeah, that's true. How about let's talk a little bit about Graham, and I think it's been so interesting, of course, what he had to do a little bit this year, but let's go back to last season as a rookie coming in at center when that hadn't been his primary position in college. How did you feel like he handled that? I mean, the transition to the NFL is always hard no matter who you are, even if you're playing the same position you always have. And then center in particular, has so many elements to it. So how did he handle that last year, and what did he do really well?
Well, the two positions, the quarterback and the center, are extensions of the coaching staff. They have to communicate well. They obviously have to play well. They have to know more of the game plan than anybody else. Luckily, when we evaled Carbs and myself, and obviously the front office evaled Graham early in his career at Duke, he was a center. So we went all the way back and watched his center reps. They did a great job of evaluating him and putting him in that role, whether he could potentially play guard or center in the NFL. And then having the luxury of having Hainsey here last year, a guy who's played in the NFL at center, and really he could lean on Hainsey last year, has been awesome. And then obviously Graham had to play some tackle this season. He athletically, phenomenal athlete, smart guy. The timing's a little bit different outside, so he had to get used to that a little bit earlier this year. But we threw him in a tackle, I remember last year during OTAs, and phenomenal athlete, has great skill set. But it's a different transition from inside to outside, outside back to inside. But I think he's happy being back in at center.
Yeah, I can imagine. And we do hear about that if you guys have, like backups on your roster that will be the swing tackle, or they'll be the interior guy that traditionally you're one or the other, that
Yes.
you have guys that are prepared to
Yes.
step into any of those interior or exterior. Explain to everybody the challenge of moving from outside to inside and what the biggest things are, especially from center all the way out to left tackle of all spots. What were the biggest things that he was going to have to face, and even maybe how Tristan kind of helped him with some of those?
Yeah, so inside you're in a little bit of a phone booth inside, and everything, is tight and compact, and you can't overset guys inside, and you usually get help by a guard, or the center's helping a guard, and you're trying to handle more bull rushes, and you have an elite 3 technique inside. There's no doubt about it in the NFL, but it's a faster paced physical game inside. On the edge, it's about timing. It's about footwork. And Tristan, Tristan was a guy that he can lean on early in the year with that. But with Graham being out on the edge, there's so much space, and there's such elite guys outside of the NFL, and we face some very elite guys early. So whether we have to have a chip to help him out, or whether we have to get his timing down at left tackle a little bit more in practice or in the game, those things are so much different, having that much space out there on the edge, obviously protecting the blind side of a right-handed quarterback too.
Yeah, we're talking to offensive line coach Brian Picucci. So Graham, what are the biggest things that we maybe even don't give enough credit for at the center position, of what he does well, but then specifically what all is asked of a center that we don't know to appreciate?
Well, we could do a lot of things differently with Graham because he's such a great athlete. But aside from that, as far as his skill level, he's got to be a great communicator in the room. He's got to handle multiple personalities or different personalities, just like the quarterback. Baker, thankfully we have Baker. Baker's great with the offensive line. He's got great communication with the wide receivers. He's got tight ends, every position. And Graham's got to be the same way in the room. He's got to have great communication with me and Carbs and with the rest of the different personalities in the room. And I think he handles it extremely well.
And then the chemistry with Baker, that's got to be such an important part. How have you watched them grow in that, and then also the way that Bredesen had to gain that when he had to move in at center?
I think it was probably easier for Bredesen when he moved in center because their relationship has developed over the years. And like you said, there has to be a lot of trust between the quarterback and the center, and that's a big deal. And when we transition a guy out of that position, obviously Baker comes into play. How he sees it, who he sees, transition that role. He has to have a trust in that person. But I think, when Graham had to prove himself early last year with Baker, but I think their relationship is great. And Bredesen didn't necessarily have to, slide in at center and prove himself to Baker. But, going back and evaling Bred last year, Bred obviously had center reps at the Giants too. So it was an easy transition. Hey, Bake, do you feel comfortable with Bred? I feel extremely comfortable with Bred, and that was probably it right there.
That's nice.
Graham probably had to prove himself.
Yeah, probably that rookie, thing
absolutely.
you got to prove a little bit. Yeah, I've heard they still call him rookie, which I thought was kind of funny.
Right.
So, what are the things that you feel like Graham still has that you guys are working on with him that could take him to that next level? Yeah,
so we had a pretty good talk about this. Graham, myself, Carbs. I think 2 games prior to the Patriots, I don't think he played to the level that he wanted to play at, especially in the drop-back pass game in the protection world. I think sometimes he gets out, he's so athletic, gets out too fast in some of his slides or sets that gets himself in trouble and overextends. So he did a great job this week of really tightening down, anchoring down, fast with his hands, playing long, and I was really happy. I was actually texting with him last night and just said, really happy where you took it, from 2 games ago where you weren't excited with your play to where you were yesterday. And I think he really did a good job of stressing that yesterday.
I like that. That's great to hear. All right, we're going to take a quick break here on Buccaneers Total Access, brought to you by Advent Health. We're talking to offensive line coach Brian Picucci. This is Buccaneers Radio. Welcome back into Buccaneers Total Access, brought to you by Advent Health. We are here with offensive line coach Brian Picucci. So we talked about Graham and his having a kick out to left tackle. He probably has even more appreciation for Tristan now, which
Absolutely.
I think we all do.
Yes.
We all love Tristan. So tell me, for you getting to come in here and coach Tristan, what did you already know about him, and then what did you learn about him here to realize just why he is as elite as he is?
Well, he was elite as a right tackle prior to me getting here, and Joe Gilbert I know a little bit from the Northeast ties, and I know Joe did a great job with him. Wasn't familiar with Harold as much, so I knew I was coming in a situation where he was one of the best in the NFL, and understood that he transitioned from right to left, and that's not an easy situation either. And obviously, he's been all league at both right tackle and left tackle, so I was excited. Didn't know what to expect, but great young man, unbelievable guy. Sits right next to me in the room in the back, and can't be happier with Coach and Tristan. So
for all of us who don't understand the true ins and outs of O-line,
yeah,
what separates him? What are the things that if you were to say, again, the good to great to truly elite for him to be all pro at right and left is insane.
Yeah.
So what are the things that we don't understand that you would notice on film that would separate him?
I don't know if it's understanding as much as a guy as big as him, as strong as him, can be as athletic as he is. And there was a great example a couple of weeks back, I think it was Seattle, where Baker scrambled and was running downfield, and Tristan's out in front of him 30 yards downfield, locked on a linebacker with one hand pressing him down the field. It's just impressive. Some of the things that he could do athletically and Graham can do athletically are just really special, and allows you to do a lot of things in this offense because of that.
And then what's the level he's playing at now, coming off that injury? I know missing time is always tough for anybody. So how's he looked since he's come back, and the way you guys have been working to get him back to full strength? Yeah,
great. Like I said yesterday, we had a lot of great dishes in drop back pass game, and like Luke, there's certain things that he wants back, or certain situations, or certain punches or sets or whatever he wants back from yesterday. But those guys are they're excellent in their technique and fundamentals, and they're just guys that really try to harp on. They're honest with themselves is the biggest thing. So he's coming along great since his injury, and expect even more from him as the season goes on.
And I know Cody Mauch, it's so sad to have lost him for the whole season. Great guy, great player. Prior to the injury, what were the things that excited you about him for this year, and just where he's come since you've been here?
Yeah, when I look at Cody, I had a great talk with him yesterday before the game. It was great seeing him down in the locker room. And when I look at Cody, he's like the heart and soul of our offensive line last year. And he was getting better in all the things that Carbs and I stress, technique, fundamental-wise. And Cody's pretty hard on himself, but he's the guy that's running downfield, protecting the quarterback, 30 yards downfield, making the big block. So we miss a little bit of that, trying to get some of the other guys, the new guys, up to speed with what Cody brought to us and the offense. And just a guy that, if fans were to watch the tape and watch, the ending of everything instead of fast forward or moving on, you could see Cody downfield just making plays downfield that just are unbelievable, and part of, the character that we want of our offensive line.
You guys have had to start, prior to this game, you'd started 5 different right guards in the first 8 games.
I didn't even realize that, but yeah.
Yeah, not ideal.
Yeah, exactly.
For the position group that is most important to have continuity in on the whole team, you guys have had the least continuity pretty much of any group. And so how about we start specifically with the kind of guard position. When you're having to rotate a bunch of guys through those spots, either one, what are the biggest challenges for that for the line overall and the impact it can have?
Well, just the position next to them, getting comfortable with them, if there's a certain twist pass off versus a specific front family, whether we're passing off a nose and a tackle, or the tackle and guard are working together to pass off a stunt over on that side, or how they communicate during the game. I go, that's huge. If they haven't worked enough in practice with those guys, you got to get caught up to speed pretty fast during the work week.
How did Charlie Heck handle having to step into some pretty big shoes to fill, but then having to do it with this rotating cast next to him is asking a lot?
Yeah, Charlie's a pretty quiet guy, but he's a confident guy, and nothing really phases him. He's pretty much the same guy every day. What Charlie brings to the table is a lot like school brought to the table last year. It's a little quieter than school, but he has that luxury of having his father as an offensive line coach. But yeah, next man up mentality. He understands that. He's older. He's been around for a while. So his one-on-one conversations in the room, it's quiet, but usually his conversations are great with whatever guard. He really hasn't said much about that, but it's been great having Charlie here. Yeah,
we're talking to offensive line coach Brian Picucci. So I know also the tight end group got called into service a little bit to help you guys. Tell us a little bit about the ways you worked with that position group and how they were able to help as you guys were going through all of this.
Yeah, I did a little more with the tight ends in the offseason as far as Justin and I. Justin does a great job with those guys, and Carbs actually worked with the tight ends when we split during practice last week and some of the run game. But yeah, we've had to use them in protection. It's not ideal. Payne looks at himself as an extension of the offensive line, and
seems like he has that mentality for it as well.
Absolutely, and Cade, is such an asset in the pass game, and having to use him at times to chip and check down. Not because Charlie couldn't handle it, but like we said, to give Baker some time to throw the ball. There's some elite players out there, and Charlie's playing a little bit banged up and fighting his way through some things himself too. So it's good to get Luke back. We could change a little bit some of the schemes and the chips on the edge, but if you don't have that plan going into the game, it's going to be a long game.
We talked a little bit about a couple of your right guards, but again, there's so many of them, or just guards in general that have played. We haven't gotten to talk about Luke Haggard or Elijah Klein yet. So tell us about those two guys and when they've had to step in there, how they've looked.
Yeah, so Luke, Carbs and I were talking during that week when the injuries were happening back a few weeks back when Luke had to play, and Carbs had that man-to-man conversation with him. Hey, we're taking you off the practice squad. We're elevating you. And Luke's like, okay, what am I going to play backup guard? And Carbs said, no, you're starting this week.
You're the thing.
Which, caught him off guard, but, he went into practice, and I think you could see, like, everybody else, the confidence building, like Luke last week, the confidence building as the practice went on. And I think he realized after he got into a football game that, I can play in the NFL. He's a guy that's a big, strong guy that doesn't get bull rushed. We got to get him to move his feet a little bit more at times, but really happy with what he did and offered us as an offense early in the season. And Elijah Klein's, he's been on that active roster last year. He worked on all the special teams for us, and then was in that swing role that you were talking about earlier at guard. That and then he had to get in the game this year and really did a great job. He wasn't active yesterday, but expect him to be active this point forward, and just expect a lot from those two guys at this point.
Is this for you? I mean, you've been coaching football a long time.
Sure.
Has this been the craziest thing you've ever had to deal with as a coach?
It is. You expect the injuries. You expect guys to, go down. I think Graham went down once last week, and Hainsey jumped in there for the New Orleans game, and we didn't miss a beat. But as many guys that have gone down at the position, many guys that have rotated to different positions, no, I don't think I've been through anything like this. But like I said, nobody really cares in the NFL.
Isn't that funny? They don't give you, they don't spot you any points.
Yeah, they don't really care. So it's
rude.
Next man up mentality, and you got to figure out a way to win a football game and to run the ball well and protect the quarterback.
Next man up mentality is just one of the most commonly used phrases because of how many injuries there are, and that it is the reality of what you have to do. But there's also a reason certain guys are starters, and so
yeah, you're not going to find Luke and Tristan Wirfs.
Yeah, they're not growing on trees everywhere.
Yeah.
So tell me how you guys try to, as coaches, make the next man up mentality actually successful. How much are you telling the person they just have to do what Tristan does versus ways to try to make it helpful for them and change things a bit of how much is it truly, hey, you just got to do that, or we're going to adjust things now to help you? It's
not necessarily what Tristan and Luke could do. It's what their skill set allows them to do. And if we have to help them out as coaches, like we said earlier about, chipping a guy or helping a guy, or like Graham, hey, maybe set this week to this jersey number on the other team, or hey, lean to this side in protection if all things are equal, meaning, hey, it's a four-man rush, maybe we want you to lean this way and call your protection slide that way. So it's a little bit of, it's hard, like we said, finding a Luke and Tristan on the streets, and we can't expect these guys to do what those two guys can do, as elite tackles. So we got to, use their skill set and maybe help them a little bit as coaches to develop that skill set and to help them out in a football game so they can function and feel confident as they're playing.
Yeah, the only person I have felt worse for in this whole thing besides you and Coach Carberry is Coach Grizzard. That here he gets thrown in first year as a play caller and is dealing with just so many injuries. It's unbelievable. So what has it been like for you guys working with him to try to help him deal with all of that, the way he's tried to work with you guys to get the most out of your group and that collaboration?
Yeah, I know he was going into the season excited about the wide receiver group, the offensive line group, getting everybody back, working with Baker. And Liam and I are pretty close, and Liam had great respect for what Grizz brought to the pass game last year. And he's a young guy, but he's been in the NFL for a long time, and he kept probably 80% of the offense this year as far as terminology, and then added his little wrinkles. But really has been, you couldn't tell that he's, really down at all. We had a lot of great players that we lost this year, but like everybody else, he stayed, status quo, stayed the same. And hey, how can we figure out how to throw the ball on third down, or protect the quarterback, or how do we run the ball? So for a young guy, he stayed even keel, and it's really good, sign of his leadership too at offense.
All right, we got one more segment coming up here on Buccaneers Total Access, brought to you by Advent Health. We're talking to offensive line coach Brian Picucci. This is Buccaneers Radio. Welcome back into our final segment here on Buccaneers Total Access, brought to you by Advent Health. We're talking to offensive line coach Brian Picucci. One guy we have not talked about yet that is probably maybe the least known guy on the whole line, but I'm very intrigued by, is Benjamin Chukwuma. I would love to hear the thoughts on a guy like this. I love these stories about guys that don't have a lot of football experience, but y'all see something in them. So tell me a little bit about what it is about him, with very little football in the background, that you thought this guy could be an NFL player, and just how his development has been coming.
Yeah, so the front office does a great job, obviously, of giving us guys that are either going to be later round guys. Obviously, the earlier round guys, we evaluate those guys, whether it's 30 guys, 20 guys, 40 guys sometimes. We evaluate those guys, and then as the draft goes on, there's a list of guys that may fall later in the draft and may fall to free agency. So Chuk is one of those guys that was falling the later. He didn't play a lot of football, but when you put the tape on, he had tremendous traits, and traits meaning he could pass block, he's long, he's athletic, he's a guy that could develop, if you give him enough time. So Grizz and I popped that tape on, and Grizz was like, wow, who's this guy? So we gave him the background. The front office scouts, Jason's guys, gave him the background. Carbs loved him on tape. So luckily we got him on the phone. I gave him an interview prior to the draft, and I thought his interview was great, X and O wise, and his character. Comes from a great, family, and really just works his tail off, and his development has been great. He's getting better every week, and he's a guy that got close to being called into a football game this year as far as, at offensive line.
Suddenly we were maybe not just developing.
Right, exactly. And you want a guy like that, because you don't want to ruin his confidence, because he hasn't played a lot of football, but he's getting better every day in practice, and he's out there on field goal extra point right now and gaining confidence as the season's going on. And Carbs is really happy. I'm happy with where he's at this point in the season.
You brought up his character, and in general, I love how the Bucs organization does value who guys are on and off the field and all of that. But then offensive line, you're also maybe asked to occasionally be a little bit of an enforcer. Tell me the mentality you guys want and how to balance that if we bring in really good guys, but then we also want them to, be that enforcer at times, and what you look for in the true mentality of them.
I think the room is developed to the point now that you better bring in the right guys in the room, or our guys will weed you out pretty quickly. But at the same time, we got to, and Coach Bowles stresses it. And when we went in the off season, free agency happened. We can go through our evals and sitting in the room. And bottom line is, Coach Bowles probably most of the time always answers everything. Is he a tough guy? Is he reliable? Is he a guy that fits the program? Is he a guy we want? And if they fit all those traits, sometimes there might be someone who's a little better athlete or maybe a little bit more talented, but may be a pain in the butt somewhere else he's been, but they pretty much weed out those guys in the front office. Jason's guys do a great job, but Coach Bowles wants tough guys at the offense. He wants reliable guys. He wants guys that are going to show up every week and play the game the way it's supposed to be played.
And speaking of Bowles, how is it going against his defense in training camp, in practice, and the ways that equips you guys a little bit better on a Sunday?
It's a challenge. It's a challenge. He's a great guy to work for, a great guy to practice against because he shows you so many multiple looks, and he mismatches his looks, meaning he puts out base defense versus our 11 personnel, makes it work in that regard, and then his his early down package is challenging enough. And then you get to the third down package, and he gives you every front family, every blitz, every DB blitzes, every linebacker blitzes. He's got overload blitzes, so he challenges you as a staff. And we've had to adjust some protections, play action protections in particular, and pass protections. But he gives you everything you're going to see in an NFL football season. Not everybody runs all the packages that he runs, but he shows us all those packages, and we have to figure out a way to block it up, which we do, and he makes us better for that.
We're talking offensive line coach Brian Picucci. How about having Baker as the guy behind your line and the way he plays the game, the way he carries himself off the field? How have you seen that influence even the way your offensive line carries themselves and plays?
Unbelievable confidence, unbelievable guy. Didn't know him prior to coming in. I knew he was very talented, elite talent, but he, like I said, elite leadership skills. He's really tight with the offensive line. He communicates well to the staff. He pops in the offensive line room every day, says hello to those guys, but I think it's the same with every position. I think guys play hard for him. He's, the modern day Brett Favre. He's got elite skills, loves the game of football, and you could see it in the way he plays and how excited he gets during a football game. But he could throw the ball, he can run the ball, and his leadership. Guys don't want to disappoint him because he's such a good guy and brings the team together. And the staff loves him. And there's nothing bad you could say about Baker. I enjoy being around Baker every day.
I love that. And blocking for Rashad, Bucky, Sean Tucker, how fun is that, knowing the different skill sets each of those guys have? And is it different depending on who you're blocking for? Does it matter? Or either way, just kind of what your guys like about the run game, knowing that they have those three behind them?
Yeah, sure. Shad did a great job yesterday, making a couple runs out of nothing and getting some positive yards yesterday. Bucky, obviously, tremendous year last year, and can't wait to get him back. And Tucker's the quiet guy, a Syracuse guy like myself, but really explosive guy. Each one of them bring different traits to the running back room, and you don't want all the same type of guy anyways. But yeah, Shad may be a good zone runner and a little more explosive on the perimeter with Tuck. Bucky kind of does a little bit of everything. Shad's really good at blitz pickup, but those guys are getting better at blitz pickup. Skip does a great job with those guys and getting them ready to play in a football game. And we get some younger guys that are coming up in the running back room too that we feel really good about. So yeah, it's great blocking for those guys, and those guys come to work every day, and we expect a lot out of the position.
So now looking to the Bills game this weekend, tell me what stands out to you. I know it's very early in the week, but their defensive front and just some of the things that you guys are going to have to be on the lookout for. Yeah,
like Coach Bowles said today, we got to pick it up a little bit more. We got to be more physical. I thought, like I said, our dishes were really good yesterday. This is a very good football team, and they're coming off of a loss, and they want to get that taste out of their mouth too. And we saw them early in the preseason. It wasn't necessarily their starting group out there, but they're not going to. They'll disguise a few coverages and try to fool you that, but they're going to line up and they're going to play football, Northeast football, and we got to match that intensity. And we're going up to a hostile environment. We got to be physical. We got to come out right away, and just like this week, score right away and play fast.
Yeah, not only is it a hostile environment, it's a loud one.
Absolutely.
So how do you guys work on that, and especially with, again, so many different people at different positions, to make sure that you're able to communicate even in a loud environment?
Well, we work on our cadence all the time when we have to go into a hostile environment like that. So we have multiple no-huddle, or not no-huddle cadences, but multiple silent cadences, whether the guard's responsible for it, the center's responsible for it, the quarterback's responsible for it. So Baker's really good. That's probably something, alluding to earlier, where maybe the normal fan doesn't notice all that stuff, but there's all that pre-snap game within a game with cadence and and trying to figure out what they're doing defensively and uncovering things defensively with cadence and that stuff. Brett does a great job of bringing the music into practice or bringing the sound into practice, but we're working on that all the time. You have to in the NFL.
Yeah, I can imagine. And then for you, I know that you've coached a lot of college prior to coming to the pros. What are the similarities or differences for you in coaching college players versus pro players, and how it's kind of helped build you into who you are?
Yeah, I did college for a number of years in the Northeast, especially. Then I got to Detroit Lions, and that was my first exposure to Detroit Lions. But you're not making a lot of mistakes where in college football you might make some mistakes as a player during a game and have 3 missed assignments or 4 here or a missed protection there. You're not getting a lot of those missed assignments in the NFL, and if you do, you're not winning a lot of football games. So, and guys take their craft and their job serious. I know they're making a lot of money here in college and the NFL right now, but really these guys take their craft serious and they care a lot about football, and they come to work every day and want to get better every day. But great human beings. Developmental side of it in college is different than the NFL. You're still trying to fine-tune and work on some things in the NFL, but a lot of those guys come pretty developed, and you're coaching the elite of the elite, and we have some really good players here.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for spending time with us. I really appreciate it, and good luck this next week.
Thank you. Appreciate
All right, that's going to do it for us on Buccaneers Total Access, brought to you by Advent Health. This is Buccaneers Radio.